Serpents of Wisdom by Edda Livingston. Part 1. Seekers there are in plenty, but they are almost all seekers of personal advantage. I can find so very few seekers after truth. Sheikh Sadi Shirazi, Persian poet, 13th century. The imitator gives expression to 100 proofs, but he speaks from discursive reasoning, not direct vision. He is musk-scented, but not musk. He smells like musk, but is only dung. Rumi. You have probably come to the realization that there are no listings of masters and true teachers in the yellow pages. It is possible to find psychics, astrologers, and other such flora and fauna, and you may even find advertisements in metaphysical-type magazines for birds of ill omen who call themselves masters, but unless we have polyps for brains, we ought to know that the only thing they are masters of is deceit of an expensive kind. In this new age we are besieged by hordes of so-called shamans, gurus, channelers, high priests, clairvoyants, magicians, yogis, wizards, witches, necromancers, dream interpreters, transcendentalists, spiritualists, diviners, and a variety of other dolts, all frantically waving wands, rods, and pointed fingers, chanting mantras, developing chakras, burning candles and incense, drawing holy circles, squares and triangles, selling talismans and charms, raising the dead, astral traveling, reading fortunes from greasy tarot cards and plastic runes, mouthing incantations, achieving cosmic awareness, reaching ecstasy through tantra, gaining power and healing by means of crystals, theorizing on the Kabbalah, practicing Norse magic, Celtic magic, Enochian magic, Teutonic magic, ceremonial magic, temple magic, and herb magic. The ill-advised followers of these self-appointed teachers swallow wholesale the most absurd propositions put forward by these coolies of the occult, these poachers on spiritual grounds. But is there a single master among them? An adept, perhaps? Or an initiate? The sad but true answer is a no, not one. There is not even a good imitation of one. So where will you find one? Do you think you would recognize a master if you did meet one? Are you under the impression that he would advertise his mastership by wearing saffron robes, flowing locks, sandals, a halo, a crown of thorns? Or could it possibly be that he is so well hidden because he looks like any one of us, giving us no obvious signs to recognize him by, and, in this manner, throwing us back on our ability to tell truth from falsehood? How many of us are willing or able to know and welcome mastership or adeptship by listening to words of truth? The majority seem to prefer personality, fame, and drivellers of ineptitude who reconfirms our preconceived opinions. And what does a master do with all his wisdom and power? How come, if they are as wise and as powerful as they are cracked up to be, don't they put an end to world hunger and injustice and to wars? How easy that would be for us. We could then carry on as our usual intolerant, greedy, and unrespectable selves, and have the masters die on an assortment of crosses on our behalf, pay the consequences for us, so to speak. Ah, what bliss! Heaven on earth! We could wallow in our smooth sinfulness without effort or care until we turned into elemental dust and blew away. Holy Hades! There would be no need to learn anything at all, and we could sit around in our recliners, like the dross of hell, moaning and griping about everything and everyone. Is this what we would like? It seems to be what the majority would like, since it is what the majority does. And anyway, to the ordinary man, all that stuff about masters, wisdom, light, and love has no meaning. It makes him yawn. What matters to him is profit, the latest football scores, fun, food, and lots of sleep. If you talk to this kind of plebeian about the more elevated things of the spirit and of the higher man, he will probably brush you aside with, in my opinion, that's a lot of bull. And it will be your own fault for thoughtlessly throwing your pearls before the swine. Your hard-gained pearls of wisdom will be trampled underfoot, and neither you nor the plebeian you sought to enlighten will have gained a thing by your eagerness to share your newfound light. Regretfully, you will soon learn that most men shun the light like so many vampires hiding in their coffins as soon as the sun comes out. The 19th century occultist Eliphas Levi said that fools are the people who kill men of genius, and we might add that they are also fond of killing the messengers sent to us from God. We all know what crass humanity did to Jesus. Apollonius of Tyana was thrown into prison and later tortured to death. Daniel was thrown to the lions. Raymond Lully was stoned to death. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. Ibn Jebral, the Kabbalist, was murdered. Jacques Cazot, the seer, was executed, and Socrates was condemned to death. Pythagoras had to flee from the tyranny of Polycrates. Cagliostro died while confined in prison. Giordano Bruno was burnt alive, Sandivogius was imprisoned and tortured, Paracelsus and Agrippa were forced to spend their lives as wretched wanderers. And the list goes on. You may argue that all this took place a long time ago, that we are more civilized these days and would never tolerate such barbaric behavior. Don't believe it. Human nature does not change much, and however arrogant and self-satisfied modern man is concerning his latest achievements and so-called progress, he is still as stupid and as cruel as ever. Fools are still persecuting and killing messengers, whether physically or by ridicule and calumny, who irritate them or who hold views considered threatening. This is one of the reasons why the wise keep silent as to who, what, and where they are, and maybe, to a lesser extent, so should you. It is also wrong to foist your beliefs on others who may be at a different stage on the path than yourself, or who may simply be going by a different route. Since it is only possible for us to understand something up to our own level, how would we know if we were foisting ourselves and our beliefs on those who have far surpassed us in knowledge and wisdom? And yet, people do all the time, unaware of the pitying and gentle smiles of those who can see through them. And although you should always protect the fellow traveler lower than yourself on the ladder to the light, you must at all times guard against being preached at or dictated to by them. As for the majority, those who care not, let them go on their merry way, without judging them, but at the same time make sure that you see them for what they are, freeing you from the danger of falling for outward trappings. Do not be like the false prophet, spoken of by Levi, who must slay if he cannot pervert. For he clamors for tolerance towards himself, but takes good care in what sense it shall be extended to others. We pray to the higher powers to show tolerance towards our own failings, and yet we forget to be tolerant towards our fellow man, persecuting them in the name of religion, country, race, and political system not the same as our own. The largest part of humanity suffers from intolerance, and the remainder tends to be apathetic and indifferent where it concerns the rights of other humans, being utterly disinterested concerning anyone's welfare but their own. Apathy is a disease more deadly than either cancer or AIDS, both of which only kills the body, whereas apathy kills the soul. By observing the fool, we can learn how not to be, but talking to them is as futile as trying to tan during a total eclipse of the sun. This is one of the reasons why the secrets of the mystic should not be divulged to fools, who would not understand them, and would ridicule the divulger, and drag the sacred teachings through the mud of their imbecility. But if the opportunity to plant a seed in their barren soils presents itself, you should do so. A good seed may lay dormant until the experiences of their lives has watered their soil with tears and enriched it with the ashes of their dreams, sprouting into a beautiful flower of wisdom, years, or lifetimes hence. It is possible that you yourself are on the path because someone, at some time, planted a seed in you. A kind soul did the work of the Master on your behalf, and you are now reaping the benefits of that kindly act. This is the way of service, and it is the only path you can take if you want to reach one of the masters. If you are sincere about reaching one of the masters, you may have to work alone, and very likely in obscurity, for a long time. There will be nobody to cheer you on, and the only evidence of the usefulness of your quest will be your faith. You will be sorely tested as to courage and strength of purpose, and these tests will sometimes present themselves to you in subtle ways, forcing you to dig deep into your purse of faithfulness and stamina. Only those in possession of an unshakable conviction, those who have to go on because they must, will reach the goal. Half-heartedness will get you nowhere, and laziness, either of the body or the spirit, will make you an easy catch for the false teacher who promises mastery in 3 short months. There are no shortcuts, no part-time positions, and no bargains to be had on the path to the light. We all have to travel the same road and overcome the same obstacles in order to obtain our goal, and only the strong and steadfast, the loving and faithful, will be crowned with success. Let us at all times remember that even the masters had to travel along this path in times gone by, and for this reason they understand fully our aching hearts and our yearnings, but they also know that the reward is well worth striving for. They know that it is necessary for man to live through material darkness, for we can only be born into the light from this darkness. But before we start longing for this birth, we must reach a point where we feel the limitations and the powerlessness of the darkness. We must long, with our whole hearts and minds, to live within the rays of the light, and we must fearlessly face the truth. If the truth hurts, we must have the ability to look within ourselves for the fault, rather than change the truth in order to spare ourselves. Then, and only then, can we hope to be noticed by the masters who live within the light. Where do the masters live? Quite near the sun. Why? Because they can stand it. When the disciple is ready, the master appears. This is a true saying, but when is a disciple ready? It is not enough to have read a few metaphysical books written by brazen-faced ink-slingers, nor is it enough to attend a variety of meetings held by some New Age style group, led by people who are as much in the dark about things as you are yourself, for that will only lead to confusion and eventual disillusionment. In Occult Enigmas, by J. Michaud, Ph.D., we may read, how many can be said to be truly ready for the master? It is a well-known fact that most seekers prefer to live in a dream within a dream of illusion. Is it not true also that most of those who profess to have a longing for probing into and learning the divine secrets prefer to solve them in their own ignorant and fantastic manner, rather than having them explained by the chosen adept, appointed to this task by the gods themselves? And how difficult it is to find such an adept and to know him. The purpose is self-enlightenment, not self-delusion, so let us set to and pluck the weeds of ignorance out of our soil. Ignorance is the great stumbling block on the path to the light, the great mountain which is conceit, and it is the first business of a student of the mysteries to do away with it, for it is not possible to learn what we think we already know. The purpose of our studies, after all, is not to have our prejudices confirmed, but to gain wisdom at any cost to our preconceived ideas. No one religion, philosophy, cult, coven, doctrine, sect, or book is going to give you all the answers. We witness today the sad spectacle of souls leeching onto unorthodox and exotic religions and belief systems. These folks wear their various religions as they would wear the latest fashions for the image it gives to others. I am tempted to call it designer religion. These windbags who follow this trend stand before you with heads full of imaginary knowledge and pretense, crystals and pentagrams at the ready, and shamelessly claim, I'm a Zen Buddhist, I practice Enochian magic, I'm into shamanism, and so on and so forth ad nauseum. If you are stupid or unfortunate enough to lend them an ear for a while, they will prate and babble deliriously, without drawing life-giving breath, in an infantile and superficial manner, about things of which they have no more understanding than the pig has about pearls. These cockalorums will tell you in no uncertain manner what to do, when to do it, what to eat, what not to eat, what to wear, what not to wear, which religion to believe in, which music to listen to, which psychic to consult, how to save the whales in the world, which quartz crystal will cure your ills in order to end up becoming as smug and as half-witted as they have managed to become. Their speeches are invariably spiced like a cheap Mexican dinner, with spices hot enough to mask the bland taste of the rehashed, refried beans. It is truly a matter of wonder what a tablespoon of karma, half a cup of Kabbalah, a few yin-yangs, some slices of kundalini, and a couple of drops of yoga can do to poor ingredients. This whole concoction will be stewed and brewed over their feeble alchemical fires until all the goodness and original flavor have evaporated. What a cauldron! What poor cooks! Is it any wonder that food such as this will not fatten their lean spirits? On the other hand, we have the Christians sitting in their pews like mutton on a skewer and filled with the fear at the prospect of losing sheep to the New Age or to heathen and pagan religions. These are the so-called friends of Jesus who, without too much prompting from the devil, will send a Jew, a Hindu, or a Muslim straight to hell for not believing as they do. In return, the Jew, Hindu, or Muslim will send the Christian to hell. It was probably this kind of intolerant ass Job had in mind when he said, "Miserable comforters are ye all." Arthur Machen, the 20th century mystic and author, also seemed to be unimpressed with the behavior of those who call themselves Christians. The New Testament for all these people has been written in vain. They will still believe that a good Christian is one who drinks a cup of cocoa at 9:30 p.m. and is in bed by 10 sharp. And to such persons, of course, the texts which assert the necessity of becoming like little children if we would enter the kingdom of heaven are clear enough. It is merely a matter of early hours and plenty of cocoa, or, perhaps, of warm bread and milk. Respectability, rather than love and mercy, is the yardstick used by our Christian brothers and sisters in these enlightened days of our Lord. And it was the dramatist Pinero who said that the vainest are those who like to be thought respectable. All is, indeed, vanity and vexation of spirit, and we come to discover that the worst man is usually him who sees himself as the best. There are many who pretend that they seek real knowledge, when in reality they seek social gatherings and attention, recognition, and admiration from other owls with opinions. The beliefs of these people are no more than superficial ideas voiced in the current terminology of their circle, to be dropped and replaced by other, equally superficial ideas as they move on to the next social gathering. Their professed beliefs appear to be dependent upon whom they befriend or socialize with, and are used as keys which open the door to the coveted club of the moment. But the person of wisdom is always alone. I did not say lonely, I said alone. There is a great difference. To a wise person the crowd is never company, the faces are undistinguished, and the conversation is no more than a string of trite phrases, the laughter is hollow, and false friendship is easily obtained and lost. Yet, out of the need for outward show, for such it is, the inept person inevitably resorts to this kind of self-important posturing, being dependent on the opinions and admiration of their ha-humming cronies. Such a person would probably not want to hear that the path has to be trodden alone, and that their only companions along the way will be the truth and the belief that they will be heard and answered when they are ready. It takes great courage to stand alone and be faithful even when life tests you, but adversity, when cheerfully overcome, builds character, which is invaluable to the aspirant. A timid person will give up at the first hurdle, like a gray mouse startled by discovery. For such the light will be too strong, only the brave warrior will gain mastery and eventual liberation. In the words of J. Michaud, Ph.D., whom I quoted earlier, once you have trained yourself to live and serve in such a way that you become worthy of that holy and most intimate contact with the Master within, and once you have learned to listen to his kindly voice and to act according to the way he guides you so lovingly, you will be found worthy to come into contact with other masters, and they will show you the way of service to those brothers and sisters who have not yet found the path, but will inevitably do so in God's good time. Who can take their pleasure in the cacophony of the hypocritical crowd once that one master has been found? It would be akin to sleeping in a bed infested with bed bugs, or having your teeth drilled down to the nerves. Most of us have, at times, indulged our curiosity by going to talks given by experts or authorities on various metaphysical subjects, and have quickly come to the conclusion that the only things they are authorities or experts on are their own feverish imaginations. No proposition is too absurd for belief, for most men are incapable of knitting two consecutive thoughts together in order to arrive at a right conclusion. The only thing the false teacher has to do is throw an incomprehensible statement at them, which will act as a spanner in the works of their brains, rendering it useless for further discrimination. And human conceit, being what it is, will not admit to its own stupidity, but will sit there listening to endless drivel with a contrived and holy look on its bland face, for fear of appearing not to have comprehended the deep and secret gasworks being wafted at them. I urge you to beware of the noxious souls who pretend to teach the mysteries, even of those who pretend to be deliverers of new gospel truths, for of the truth they have no more idea than a cockroach has of fine dining. Most of the sacred writings and great minds of this world warn us, if we take the trouble to consult them, about the false teachers. The third book of the Pistis Sophia says, "Renounce the doctrines of error, that you may be worthy of the mysteries of the light and saved from all the chastisements of the great dragon of the outer darkness." And in John 5:1 it says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they be of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world." Abiding in the midst of ignorance, thinking themselves wise and learned, fools go aimlessly hither and thither, like the blind led by the blind. So states the Katha Upanishad, and it goes on to say, this sacred knowledge is not attained by reasoning, but it can be given by a true teacher. Not many hear of him, and of those not many reach him, and he cannot be reached by much thinking. Wonderful is he who can teach about him, and wise is he who can be taught. Wonderful is he who knows him when taught. But the majority of students mistake the false teacher for the true and spend their lives chasing after these knaves. Engaged on a quest of utter futility, they waste their time and money on moronic books, psychic readings, and New Age workshops. All to no avail. The cloud of darkness hangs about them thicker than ever. The crude and oily exudations of the false teacher burns like any other oil well, with lots of show, little benefit, and a certain amount of danger. Before the self-appointed victims know it, the black cloud of smoke shuts out the light and leaves them, scared and confused, groping about in the dark. False doctrines can only be preached to men who do not think, to those with cerebral congestion and an immune system weakened by repeated bouts of hallucination. Once their defenses are down, they catch every spiritual plague of every disease-carrying rat they lay themselves open to. Not yet satisfied, they want others to catch it too. They proceed to cough their infested coagulum into the faces of any person who does not know how to take to his heels. In an account of an initiation from the book Egyptian Mysteries, the Hierophant says to the candidate, "Learn to see clearly, learn to wish for what is just, learn to dare what your conscience dictates, learn to keep your intentions secret, and if, despite all your efforts, today brings no more than yesterday, do not lose courage, but continue steadfastly, keeping your goal before you with determination. Onward!" The root matter of this great knowledge, the wisdom of the masters, is not to be found in books, says Plato, but that we must seek it in ourselves by means of deep meditation. This is perfectly true, for the sacred writings are heavily veiled in their esoteric parts, and unless a person has the keys, it is almost impossible to open the door to the temple of wisdom. These keys are in the keeping of the masters, and unless we can live in such a way as to become worthy of their attention, we shall have to live in the darkness of the outer court where all is confusion. Meditate, by all means, but let your meditation be in attunement with light and with love. Wait for the true master in peace and secrecy, for how can a master contact a person full of turmoil and one who continuously seeks out the friendless and envious crowd? To the person who is deemed ready and who has been chosen, the holy laws will be revealed only under solemn vows of silence. The reason for this is simple. Were the false teachers to get wind of the secret laws, they would do to them that which they have done to everything else, use them for their own glory and their own financial gain. The holy laws would fall prey to man's first instinct, the lower self, which is only interested in earthly appetites, selfishness, and greed, and the true messenger would be ridiculed and persecuted. In this manner would the Savior of mankind, the truth of the Most High, be dragged through the mud and lost forever to the true seeker on earth. Darkness would reign supreme, and the hope of the genuine disciple would go unfulfilled and unmet. For these reasons will the adept keep the holy laws out of the hands of the unscrupulous and the unready. It is to be kept safe, as a pearl of great price for those whose earthly skin is wearing thin, for the battle-scarred warrior who has come through lifetimes of tests and trials, and whose whole being longs for peace and mercy. To such the truth is given with tenderness and love by the masters of wisdom, and there is no greater gift for the weary traveler. How far removed this is from the smelly gatherings of sniveling fanatics who have the audacity to call themselves masters and adepts. The difference is as great as between heaven and hell, and the choice is yours. If you align yourself with the latter, your head will be full of imaginary knowledge and pretense, and the wise will flee from you. They know that outward show and vain posturings are the marks by which they can recognize the inept, the slaves of ignorance of this world. Of the mighty simplicity of the works of the hidden deity, they know nothing. Humble worship from the heart is alien to them, and the true teacher is hidden from them by God's splendor, that they may not know him. Let us listen to the wise words of Dr. Michaud again. We are either negative and destructive in our thinking and acting, thus associating ourselves with the black side of everything in the universe, or we think positive and constructive thoughts, building in the full blaze of the cosmic light and goodness, instead of cowering like cravens in dark corners, together with all the devils of hell. There is no middle way, unless we call aimlessly drifting along without even attempting to turn to either light or darkness a third way. But to imagine such an existence as another way or path is unthinkable. We are, or should be, either dwellers in the murky dark, forever hating, moaning, and destroying, or we are the children of light, glorified in the union of all that is good and godlike. There is no middle way. From ignorance spring all the world's evils. It is the parent of materialism and greed, of pride and envy, and of cruelty and hatred. An ignorant person is one who bases his opinions on lies, and who is utterly unaware of the holy universal laws of things that are, thus making his opinions worthless, as any opinion based on a lie must be. We are all more or less ignorant, it is true, but there is a difference between the person who is oblivious to their own ignorance, thinking they know it all, and who dishes it out to all and sundry in a sanctimonious manner, and the wise who are painfully aware of their own ignorance, for they have discovered that the more we know how little we know. While the former are beating their chests and blowing their discordant trumpets, the latter goes about his life calmly and quietly, trusting in the Lords of life to show him the way, being all the while careful to avoid dogmatism, for he knows that life on earth is an illusion and other men's opinions are based on shifting and elusive foundations. Dean W. R. Inges said of opinion, public opinion, a vulgar, impertinent, anonymous tyrant who deliberately makes life unpleasant for anyone who is not content to be the average man. So you, as a seeker on the path to the light, and who is not the average man or woman, should dismiss all opinionated men as if they are of no consequence and value. In this manner can you make these boors as impotent as eunuchs in a harem. The persons most vulnerable to ridicule are those filled with pride and pretensions. We find these pride-filled scabs in all walks of life. There is the prude who is proud of his purity, the prig who is proud of his own behavior, the racist who is proud of his own race, the fool who is proud of his littleness. I am sure we all know such a person, group of persons, race or nation, for these are not hard to find in this world of ours. These fools advertise their folly by self-congratulation, self-righteousness, flag-waving, and by a sorry lack of humor where it concerns themselves, their possessions, or their station in life. All, and the majority of mankind are guilty, forget that the gods giveth and the gods taketh away. Nothing, either good or bad, can be achieved without their intervention and assistance. H. P. Blavatsky, the great 19th century occultist and teacher, said, "Self-congratulation is like unto a lofty tower, up which a haughty fool has climbed." Thereon he sits in prideful solitude and is unperceived by any but himself. The only one such a person impresses is himself, for people, on the whole, are only interested in themselves, caring nothing for, or being envious of other people's vain dreams. You can recognize the truly great persons by their quiet dignity and their lack of empty boasts, for they have no need of pretense, being already in possession of that which the stupid person pretend to be in possession of, perfect accomplishment, and perfect accomplishment in any field of endeavor is always to be admired. One must stand in awe of a spider spinning his incomparable web, or the artist who presents us with his peerless creations. Care and devotion to any task or undertaking is always worthy of commendation and to be admired. By their works shall ye know them. Not by their fair show, which Shakespeare claimed meant the most deceit, nor by their riches, family name, or university degrees, for greatness can only be achieved by, and should only be admired because of perfect accomplishment. Whatever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. Ecclesiastes 9:10. The fool knows nothing of perfect accomplishment, but basks in empty glory while rolling the stone of Sisyphus along the broad path of the mediocre. Their dream is to be admired and applauded, and perhaps even envied, by other fools. The easiest way of achieving this, as the sly fool has discovered, is by lowering yourself far enough, by crawling in the dirt if you have to. That there are many who are willing to pay this price for fame can be witnessed in the world of entertainment where, for a burst of applause and their chance to appear on TV, they are willing to degrade themselves to appeal to the very basest emotions of their audience. It is probably a good thing that they are oblivious to the indulgent smiles of the wise, who behold their prancings with patience and tolerance, much in the same manner a teacher of the deaf and blind would behold his students. He knows that after a long night of hard work, trials, and bitter tears, dawn will come. Eventually, even the lowest and coarsest human must evolve. The whips of experience will see to it. The higher nature, which has up to then been willfully suppressed, will stir and make itself known. Tenderness will flower in the once brutish heart, and it will ache with longing for its lost inheritance. Cruelty and fear, which are the signs of a brute, will be replaced by compassion and faith. Evolution is inevitable, and even if the process seems endless to our limited understanding, the day must and will come when the presently foolish will stop climbing trees to seek for fish. With ignorance wage eternal war, to know thyself forever strain. Thine ignorance of thine ignorance is thy fiercest foe, thy deadliest bane. That blunts thy sense, and dulls thy taste, that deafs thine ears, and blinds thine eyes, creates the thing that never was, the thing that ever is defies. Sir Richard Burton, The Cassida. The critical time in which the search for the true master begins is once we become aware of the stirrings of the higher mind. Of such awakened souls, there are very few at all times, and strength is needed for such in order to withstand the misapplied encouragement of the multitude who would dearly want these souls to join them in their pit of manifold deceptions. This is why I encourage you to stand alone, to hold fast to your inner urgings, and not allow yourself to be sidetracked by the gaudy swagger and the vulgar sideshows of the high-plumed fool. Place not your aching heart in the care of scoundrels who would have you pay for the privilege of having your intelligence insulted. Away, away, from men and towns, to the wild wood and the downs, to the silent wilderness where the soul need not repress its music, lest it should not find an echo in another mind, while the touch of nature's art harmonizes heart to heart. Shelley, An Invitation. Serpents of Wisdom. Part 2, La Rochefoucauld in his Maxim said that the desire of appearing clever often prevents us from becoming so. As students of the mysteries, we must rid ourselves of the silly habit of pretending to know so that we can, at last, find out what it was we never did know. True freedom lies in real knowledge and is not, as generally believed, granted to American citizens by the First Amendment, which is only pretend freedom and need not concern us here. We have all heard the saying, and the truth shall set you free, and so it will if we can determine where we can find it. Can you learn it in school? At your local church, synagogue, or mosque? From books? From a Tibetan guru? I doubt it. Listen to Sir Richard Burton again. All faith is false, all faith is true. Truth is the shattered mirror strewn in myriad bits, while each believes his little bit the whole to own. Cassida. Old Omar Khayyam evidently encountered the same problem, for in his quatrain 27 he says that although he frequented both doctor and saint and heard great argument, he still came out by the same door as in he went. No wonder he found solace in the wine bottle. Even an old Indian I once knew, Side Meat Chali, got confused by all the conflicting theories and had to come up with his own answer to the question under discussion. Before he discovered the earth, everybody thought he was flat, but this Columbus man, he say the world's round, but now he look like the damn thing is crooked. Which one of us would care to argue with this profound observation? Humanity, the great ignoble vulgus, has never quite been able to see the trees for the forest, or the forest for the trees. The visible has always stood in the way of the great invisible, blocking our view of things as they actually are. Arthur Machen, who has been dubbed the Apostle of Wonder, wondered at length about this perplexing human condition. It seems clear that things which are most clear may yet be most closely hidden for long ages, and hidden not only from the gross and sensual man, but for the fine and cultured man. And that being evident, does not the consequence follow that we who have certainly not attained to perfection of any kind, may be, nay, almost certainly are, as blind as those who have gone before us, that we too gaze at great wonders, both of the body and the spirit, without discerning the marvels that are all around us? And again, it would appear that we may be groping after the perception of things which we apprehend in a dim and broken and imperfect manner. All manner of things may be under the eyes of men through long ages, and yet be unperceived, undiscerned by them. This is true, and yet these things are none the less there. The reason for this is that our opinions, intellect, and bigotry act as a screen between us and illumination. Our own reality, which is nothing but an illusion, prevents us from seeing things as they truly are, and as long as we think we see all there is to see, we will remain blind to the divine wisdom hidden directly under our noses. Sir Isaac Newton, that great and true scientist, echoed the same thought when he said, "I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." Since truth is everlasting and unchangeable, it can only exist in the equally everlasting and unchangeable soul, which we must learn to contact by means of our higher minds, our very own guide and master. For this reason, truth cannot exist on earth, for everything that is given birth here must die and change into something else. Most people are not even aware of being in possession of a higher mind, but are normally completely ruled by the lower mind with its earthly and gross appetites. It is therefore easy to sway and manipulate the masses by appealing to their vanity and greed, which are characteristics of a ruling lower mind. Promise bovine humanity earthly riches and power, and they will fall for it every time. To become the leader of such a flock is relatively simple for someone with a large amount of cunning and a vivid imagination, and we witness the truth of this fact when we appraise the array of self-made masters, preachers, authors, and metaphysical teachers. At times their claims are so shockingly simplistic, even downright corny, that a person in his right mind would not for a moment entertain the idea that others may fall for such nonsense, only to find out at a later date that he had been wrong. Very wrong. If you tell these covetous lower minds, with great authority and tongue-in-cheek, that you have discovered a secret which did not sink with ancient Atlantis, that this secret can give them unlimited power, which, in turn, can be used as a tool for amassing all kinds of earthly rubbish, you might discover to your surprise that you will be believed and recompensed by an army of dolts. Few people realize that the greatest secret is free and easily obtained. Eliphas Levi explains, progress is a possibility for the animal. It can be broken in, tamed and trained, but it is not a possibility for the fool, because the fool thinks he has nothing to learn. It is his place to dictate to others and put them right, and so it is impossible to reason with him. He will laugh you to scorn in saying that what he does not understand is not a meaningful proposition. Why don't I understand it, then, he asks you, with marvelous impudence. To tell him it is because he is a fool would only be taken as an insult, so there is nothing you can say in reply. Everybody else sees it quite clearly, but he will never realize it. Here then, at the outset, is a potent secret which is inaccessible to the majority of people, a secret which they will never guess and which it would be useless to tell them, the secret of their own stupidity. And no fools are as difficult to manage and as frustrating to deal with as those with some brains and a university degree. A philosophy degree, for example, does not immediately turn its owner into a Plato or a Kant, but will, more often than not, turn uninspired minds with good memories into machines, able to quote other people's works endlessly, but without a blood, sweat, and tears understanding, and without the ability to put their enormous learning to practical use. We see the same trait in Bible thumpers who have managed to learn the scriptures by heart and whom it is of no use to get into a discussion with because they will quote chapter and verse for every occasion. You know that they might as well be quoting from the phone book for all the understanding they have, but they don't know, and to tell them would only bring the wrath of the four beasts of the apocalypse down upon your head. I suggest that we should be wary of this kind of dogmatist, as weary as Shakespeare was when he wrote that the devil can cite scripture for his purpose. But out of all the hair-splitting experts, the horned crown and the donkey tail must go to the scientists. For these ruptuaries were gullible enough to give the atom bomb to the politicians. A wise man would have kept quiet about his discoveries, but then a wise man has not the vanity of a scientific peacock out hunting for fame and glory at the expense of us all. And although some suspect, and others know for certain, that modern science is founded on a series of absurdities and contradictions in terms, and a sepulchre of vast proportions would be needed to house their dead theories, the masses still honors, and are influenced by these inflated bladders. Never mind that their chemical putrefactions have put the whole planet in danger, and that the ozone layer looks more like a moth-eaten sweater. Let's take their advice on diet instead. Let us take time out to wonder with Mackin again. It is monstrous indeed that science, shown to be mad in the abstract, should presume to dictate to us in the concrete. Yet it does. Look at the solemn diets that are prescribed. I have known people who live, or think they live, for they are not alive, on nuts, carrots, bread, and dates. This diet is supposed to be a cure for rheumatism. I do not know whether a wise man would not prefer to be rheumatic. But the worst of it is that people who live in this ridiculous way, who follow the vague treatment, as it is called, affect airs of superiority. They look down on the people who eat chops and steaks and thank God for them. We might all be better served by experts like the astrophysicist of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center, who, with the aid of a Z-machine and the 60-inch telescope on Mount Hopkins, and a research grant, of course, peered out into space and claimed what he found there was a whole lot of nothing. As long as these screwballs find nothing, I feel safe, for nothing of consequence can come out of nothing. But this was a few years ago, and, by now, he may unfortunately have found something, although I suspect that something may also be nothing of consequence, as the most profound vacuum in the universe could well be found in his brain. Let us hope that he does not start prescribing diets, or we could well end up with nothing to eat, like ascetics with rice and water struck from our meal plan. Oh, whoa! Exact science and her scientists, like a harlot and her pimps, rapes the world daily in an orgy of vulgarity, seducing the superficial masses with honeyed tongues and ostentatious booty, luring our testosterone-poisoned leaders into buying themselves the largest lingam of them all, the nuclear missile. These odious transactions can be written off to progress or civilization, but I have it on good authority that they are not tax-free. Jacques Bergier claimed that the alchemist Fulcanelli visited him in his laboratory in 1937 to warn Bergier and his fellow scientists about their researches into nuclear energy. Fulcanelli said that the work you and your colleagues are undertaking is appallingly dangerous. It imperils not only yourself, it is a threat to the whole of humanity. The liberation of atomic energy is easier than you think, and the radioactivity produced can poison the atmosphere of the entire planet in the space of a few years. He went on to tell Bergier that the alchemists have known the secret for a long time, but that they, unlike the scientists of today, have always taken religious and moral issues into consideration when carrying out their researches, while modern physics was born in the 18th century from the spare time amusements of a few lords and rich libertines. Science without conscience. I thought it my duty to warn a few research workers here and there, but I have no hope that my warnings will bear fruit. Taking it all in all, I have no reason to hope. Fulcanelli was correct. The scientific Satans did not heed his warning, and in their ungodly arrogance have gone on to become the black magicians of the modern world. Their dark spell has been cast, and it is up to us to try to cancel its outcome by sending forth the light and by promoting peace wherever we go. But here I must sound a warning. Peace within is not the same as undisturbed tranquility, which is by no means the lot of the genuine student of the mysteries. In order to gain sufficient knowledge and wisdom, they have to plunge into the thick of the fray and overcome all obstacles. Only by such means can they achieve victory. One cannot win a battle without engaging the enemy. And the enemy of peace is dark ignorance, creating tornadoes of turmoil and chaos wherever it touches down. There exists an illusory peace as witnessed by those who spend their lives meditating upon their navels, with vacuous smiles upon their faces, while others feed them. Nor can peace be attained by blotting out our feelings. One must learn to master and subdue the lower emotions, it is true, but one must be careful not to kill them out, for the emotions are the true steeds which will one day wing you up to heaven. But be assured, peace can be attained midst the roar of battle. Peace will not take up residence in an ascetic, for his heart is cold and chilly, and bereft of generosity. His mind too is narrow, and lacks either material or spiritual vision. God gave the lush fruits of this lovely earth to man, that he may savor and enjoy their goodness. Only when he abuses such gifts with excesses do these bounties become a yoke and a burden, crushing him to the ground. Akbar Khan in his Tasawwuf-i-Azim says that the only discipline worthwhile is that which is achieved in the midst of temptation. A man who, like the anchorite, abandons the world and cuts himself off from temptations and distractions cannot achieve power. For power is that which is won through being wrested from the midst of weakness and uncertainty. The ascetic living a holy monastic life is deluding himself. These ascetics are not necessarily just the fanatics from Eastern countries, but also those from the Western world who avoid things, thinking in their ignorance that there is virtue in avoidance. The worst effect of this is when a person avoids a thing, thinking it good to do so, he often begrudges others the very thing he cannot himself enjoy. A good example of this is the ex-smoker who will preach tirelessly against the evils of tobacco, boring all smokers to death with self-righteous sermons. It is as if they are saying to themselves, "If I am miserable, I am going to make everybody else miserable too." Only the few are capable of carrying out their convictions quietly and on their own, be it the decision to become an ex-meat eater, an ex-smoker, or an ex-anything else in the world. These ex-humans do not seem to feel satisfied until they have made everyone else feel guilty for not being as noble as they think themselves. These are the true communists who think that their propaganda, like manure, will do no good unless it is spread abroad. To all these folks, let us say as the conductor said to the tuba player who played a loud and wrong note during rehearsals, "Thank you. And now will you please pull the chain?" Should you ever be blessed enough to meet a real master of the mysteries, you would not be confronted by an earthly saint, for they are myths created by dreamers or liars, as the case may be, nor will his diet consist of bran, a food fit for rabbits, and neither will he be living in a dark and damp cave, the home of bats, nor will he be dressed in a dirty loincloth and sandals, the attire of an ascetic. A true master is filled with luxury, the luxury of the spirit. His joy and sense of humor is infectious, giving you a foretaste of a higher realm filled with celebration and poignant jubilation. From him you will learn to appreciate the perfume of ripely rounded roses, the lusty odor of a library filled with old, leather-bound books, the taste of vintage wine, the feel to the touch of an ancient statue, and the sound of heavenly music, and yet he will teach you how to value these things according to their worth. He is indifferent to other men's opinions, and hence is above all blame and praise, for he is free, having acquired comfort and enlightenment from the soul. He is a warm and magnetic human being who knows all, yet does not let on that he knows. He does not boast or preach, nor does he judge. To be followed in droves by silly old women and saffron-robed men would be abhorrent to him, therefore he works quietly and in secret among the sick and the needy, the poor and the suffering. His is the cool hand on troubled brows, the love that asks no rewards, and the feathery wings that protect those in his keeping from all harm. You will not find him giving talks to groups of mystery-mongers and half-witted New Agers, but he will reserve his wisdom and the holy teachings for his chosen few, those he deems teachable. He knows that talking to a fool is like pouring water into a sieve. Once he has finished talking, not a drop remains in their Swiss cheese brains. It would be as futile as reading H. P. Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine to a herd of cows, or sending your pet parrot to Mecca for the pilgrimage. It may come home screeching Allahu Akbar every couple of minutes, but it would not comprehend what it was saying. It reminds us of a few people we know, don't you agree? At all times there are masters walking among you, and simple though they are to know, people know them not, for the material rubbish that fill their hearts and minds acts as a veil to conceal the master's light. The majority prefer the showmanship of the false teacher, for he will pamper their vanity and puff up their pigeon chests with pride. Verily, I say unto you, they have their reward. May the Lords of life and light bless and keep the masters, and give them peace in the secret place to be, safe from the ignorant masses who cannot bear the light. When the experiences of life have tried and tested you until you are on the brink of despair, and when an indescribable sorrow and an intense longing for, you know not what, oppresses you, then you will know that the time has come. But as the old Persian poet said, under the sun and stars there is no saying, or no fool or wise man, that is nearer to the truth than that now is the appointed time. But it may be the time for waiting. And it may be the time for patience. When I said to my teacher, "Tell me what to do now, I will do it," he went fishing. Stop looking for a quick fix and cultivate patience, for a patient person is someone who is filled with trust that their needs will be met. And we all know, or do we, that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. Trust in God, he will not deceive thee, nor will persevering patience leave thee long in affliction. Patience is the fairest light of man. For ancient books of Wales. The modern world is filled to overflowing with restless and anxious souls, rushing to and fro and dealing with reality, making themselves irritable and weary-worn in the process. Everything needs to be instant in order to save money-making time. Even the entertainment has to be short and sharp in keeping with the attention span, which is also short, but not necessarily sharp. Something similar to shock therapy, perhaps? Assuming that you are careless enough to tell your friends that you plan to spend years in search of the truth, they would probably accuse you of being eccentric and irresponsible. Who needs time wasted on all that mystical mumbo-jumbo when one could be earning money? Or partying? Or working out? Yes. This is the average modern man or woman, the proud product of Western civilization. Eliphas Levi says that such men will never understand anything of occult. Occult means hidden, philosophy, and it is for them alone that it remains a cult. As occult as common sense for the fanatics of the world. As occult as reason for the truly mad. For occultism is the philosophy of light, the philosophy of common sense, the philosophy of exactitude, precise as numbers, as rigorous as the proportions of geometry, as evident as being, and as infallible as the mathematics of eternity. He is blind who does not see it, but he is all the more blind who claims to see it by night. Never will the stupid and the vulgar comprehend the high wisdom of the Magi. And never should the stupid and vulgar meddle with the holy teachings, but go out and enjoy themselves instead. And neither should you try to convert them, like some common Christian missionary, but keep silent about what you know. But when the seeker after knowledge comes forward, after he is tested to discover if he is worthy, he will be spoken to. When a person is ready to enter the light, the higher powers will lead him to it. Raymond Andrea, in his book on the technique of the master, correctly states that when a disciple is ready to learn, then he is accepted, acknowledged, and recognized. It must be so, for he has lit his lamp, and it cannot be hidden. However, for as long as vanity and pride rules over the love of truth, the lamp will be hidden under the bushel, and he will not be considered ready. It takes strength and courage to walk along the steep and thorny path of truth, and he will only make it who has not brought along the baggage of the vain. The masters, and the path to the masters, has for too long been seen in the rosy light commonly associated with the pets of the silver screen. An aura of mystery, glamour, and romance, and rumors of supernatural manifestations has drawn the unbalanced and the deluded to the occult mysteries. For these reasons, it has been given a bad name among people with a healthy amount of common sense, and rightly so, for the main bulk of it, ancient and modern, deserves no deep investigation and can, without hesitation, be deposited into the most convenient trash can. The sooner delusions are shattered, the better, for only then can we begin our first testing step on the journey to the light and the truth. The first step is an important one, in that it is the beginning of the journey of 1,000 miles, and we can only go on once we have decided to take the first step. Nobody can make this journey on your behalf. You have to travel the road yourself, because only personal experience will do. To listen to another's tales of the marvels he saw and the things he experienced is not the same as living through the experience yourself. You may heed another traveler's advice as to the pitfalls on the journey if you first make sure that he actually undertook the journey himself and did not bring you second-hand information and heresy. Most so-called mystics have unfortunately taken the accounts of true initiates and with the aid of their delirious imaginations have added fictions of their own and subtracted the marrow of truth in an attempt to impress the credulous masses with their hand-me-down and faded tales. Any fool can gather knowledge or have it stuffed down their throats, but the wisdom which is required to interpret knowledge and use it is something that each must learn for himself in the school of existence. It is life and life experience which is the great initiator. What good is a theory when you are confronted by a person who, through one of life's circumstances, cries out for help? Only a person who knows from first-hand experience how relentless and painful a suffering heart can be is able to give comfort to a soul in affliction. The timid and the faint-hearted who shy away from sounding the depths of human suffering can never be of help to anyone and would probably stumble and fall over the first sharp stone on the path. These are the helpless, the feeble, and the lukewarm, without faith and courage, themselves in need of being saved from their miseries. And you, as a student and a servant on the path, who is going to comfort you? Your suffering may be more intense than the average person's, and at times it may even threaten to overwhelm you, but yet you will need to stand alone and apart from the crowd, apart even from friends and family, for they are unable to comfort you. It is profoundly true that once the aspirant enters the path, life will test him in all experiences, taking him to the limits of his capabilities, and then some. So who will tend to your battle wounds? Only your own soul can do that, only the truth from your own soul. From now on, the soul will be your only friend and companion. This may seem like a lonely proposition to some, and to those who are not in communion with their souls, it will be just that. They will be far better off waiting until life's blows will have woken them up before entering on the sacred quest. To suffer woes, which hope thinks infinite, to forgive wrongs darker than death or night, to defy power, which seems omnipotent, to love and bear, to hope till hope creates from its own wreck the thing it contemplates, neither to change, nor falter, nor repent, this, like thy glory, Titan, is to be good, great and joyous, beautiful and free. This is alone life, joy, empire, and victory. Shelley, Prometheus Unbound. It is far better not to enter the maze of the mysteries and try to solve its riddles, only to backslide halfway through. If, by now, you feel that the path holds too many grave responsibilities, tests, and trials not worth subjecting yourself to, I suggest you do like the old Wichita Indian who joined the Seventh-day Adventists. You can't beat if you want smooth sailing. But if your decision is to stay the course, you cannot do better than to imprint on yourself the first principles, for they are the most important. Unless you build on a solid foundation, your castle will be washed away by the first strong wave, it being built on shifting sands. Learn to build like the master builders of the Great Pyramid, and then not even an earthquake will succeed in toppling you. If you build in wisdom, your work will last forever. Truth does not suddenly come tumbling down, only untruth falls and leaves you stranded without insurance and compensation. It is a chill wind that blows at such times, and without wisdom's feathery wings to protect you, where will you turn? Raymond Andrea, mentioned earlier, was the past Grand Master of the Rosicrucian Order of Great Britain and gave much invaluable advice to the aspirant in his books The Technique of the Disciple and The Technique of the Master. He must suffer, must enjoy or endure more keenly than other men. It is indeed a secret cross, which perforce he must carry, and the effects in himself are often so singular and antagonizing a character that he is apt to question the usefulness of submitting to it. A life not put to the test, a life without obstacles to overcome, is hardly worth living. Growth is only possible in adversity, through battles fought and won. The enemy has to be confronted and overcome. If we get driven to our knees by the enemy, and by enemy is here meant the lower passions, the lower mind, we have lost the battle through lack of willpower and faith. This is cowardice which, out of spiritual laziness, chooses undisturbed tranquility. The occult world is not suited for these prostrated victims, but strangely enough, these are the ones who often flock to it, thinking, perhaps, that it is going to, by some supernatural power, give them magical adeptness without effort on their part. Have not lurid advertisements told them repeatedly that, for a fee, they can obtain all that which their little hearts desire? When heaven is about to impose an important office upon a man, it first embitters his heart in its purpose, it causes him to exert his bones and sinews, it lets his body suffer hunger, it inflicts upon him want and poverty, and confounds his undertakings. In this way, it stimulates his heart, steels his nature, and supplies that of which the man would be incapable, Mencius. There are no shortcuts to the masters, the one and only road is long and full of responsibilities and infinite yearnings. It is a most severe apprenticeship and can only be undertaken by a seeker who has questioned his heart and mind and has arrived at the conclusion that he must. He will have to know, without a doubt, that it is the only path. Maybe you had something quite different in mind. You may have hoped for a life filled with tables rapping, bells tinkling mysteriously, dollar bills materializing in your hand, letters delivered by magic, spirit writings, and secret hideaways in Tibet, all with which you could dazzle and impress your friends. Your idea of a master may be of someone who, in his spare time, comes through from the astral realms, or perhaps just the good old Himalayas, to perform circus tricks for the entertainment of a few bored metaphysical students. All these are but childish games of benefit to no one, and who in their right mind would care if the masters can do such things? Let me quote H. P. Blavatsky, who, great though she was to some extent responsible for starting all this nonsense in the first place, probably as a way to get people to listen to the important things she had to say. In War in Heaven is shown, in one of its significations, to have referred to those terrible struggles in store for the candidate for adeptship, struggles between himself and his, by magic, personified human passions, when the enlightened inner man had to either slay them or fail. In the former case he became the dragon slayer, as having cast off his old skin and being born in a new body, becoming a son of wisdom and immortality in eternity. This is pure alchemy, the transmutation of the lower human passions into the higher. But we must be careful not to slay all passions, otherwise we would become inhuman and of no use to anybody, least of all to ourselves. The higher human passions are what turns us into human beings. Without them we would be less than wild animals. Mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. True hermetic transmutation is a mental art. The Kybalion. This can be done by an exercise of the will, without which the great work cannot be done. The will is absolutely necessary in order to effect a mental transmutation, and if you, by means of the will, separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, acting prudently and with great judgment, as we may read in the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, you will produce pure gold. But this transmutation cannot be performed by the idle, for it takes continual effort, great skill, patience, a willingness to recognize error, and the courage to continue with the great work even when all seems lost. The philosopher's stone is given by the great, thrice great Hermes to those who have been sorely tested, and who, in unwavering faith, still continue onward without thought of turning back. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name is written, which no man knoweth saving he that receiveth it. Revelation 2:17. Serpents of Wisdom. Part 3, Meditation on God's Works elevates the spirit, and meditation on the divine principles of light, life and love, says Dr. Michaud in Occult Enigmas, will carry you through life, no matter how hard it may seem at times. You will find that your problems will be solved, difficulties will melt away, and help will come to you from the most unexpected quarters. He goes on to say that, in this way, we prepare ourselves to do the work of the masters. For if we are to work for and with them and eventually become masters ourselves, we must be ready in every way in health, clean and sane thinking, charity and love to all. If we are not so prepared, we are useless and need help instead of offering it freely to others. It is always wise to meditate on familiar and beautiful things, to lose oneself in nature, in noble and lofty thoughts, in gratefulness to God, and to encourage peace within ourselves. To meditate on a foreign word or phrase, of which the aspirant has no deep and real understanding, is of little value, and it may even cause inaction, which in turn halts spiritual growth. A good example of this is the word OM. We have all heard of it over and over and over again. But how many know the real meaning of this term? Try asking the majority of its venerators, and you will invariably get some nebulous answer about hailing the jewel in the lotus. All this sounds very beautiful, but what does the jewel in the lotus serve as a symbol for? Here is where most of those who have been intoning or meditating on this word will give you a blank stare. They can usually tell you that the word is Sanskrit and give you a kindergarten-style explanation they learned from some modern guru, but that, coupled with the fact that they can even write the word in Sanskrit characters, does not constitute a true understanding. Let us listen to what Dr. Michaud says on this matter in his book, The Golden Star, Mani Padme Hum, is everlastingly intoned both in Tibet and elsewhere. The real purpose of it is to attain a pure state of meditation by successively closing all the gates to the various worlds of illusion. Or OM, as it is wrongly spelled and pronounced, is used to shut out the illusion of the heavenly world, the world of spirits, and the earthly human world, Pad, the animal world, the world of tantalized specters or elementaries or elementals, the nether world or hell. The only trouble is that the mere mumbling of this phrase is entirely useless, and the devotee should meditate on the purpose of each syllable for a considerable time, so that he actually succeeds in the closing of all those gates, and the way to truth opens. Moreover, these words should be meditated upon, not spoken. Is the sacred syllable, the triple-lettered unit, the Trinity in one. In the Katha Upanishad, it says that is the word that the Vedas glorify. This word is the everlasting Brahman, the highest end. When this sacred word is known, all longings are fulfilled, supreme salvation is yours, and you will be considered great in heaven of Brahman. This obviously does not mean that it is enough to know the word Om or Om superficially. To know a few letters or characters strung together, Sanskrit or not, holds no magic or enlightenment in itself, but it does as a sacred symbol. Simplicity is to be desired in our quest for truth, but to hang the Sanskrit characters A-U-M on a chain around your neck without knowing why is the wrong kind of simplicity, the kind which will not open the gates to the heaven of Brahman, but may instead leave you wandering helplessly about in the astral realms of illusion, or perhaps in the Tibetan realm of the densely packed, until the time comes for another reincarnation on earth. Another, far more dangerous practice, popularized by many fashionable New Age gurus, is the raising of the Kundalini, the serpent power situated at the base of the spine. It is not something the uninitiated should meddle with, because, if not properly controlled, it can lead to insanity and obsessions of the basest kind. Any aspirant would be well advised to steer absolutely clear of all popular theories on the awakening of the chakras until he can be instructed by an adept in their uses. There is not a single book to be bought that can instruct one correctly and safely on this matter, for the truth about the chakras has never been freely given out to the masses, any more than have any other esoteric teachings. In the Golden Star, we may read that, it is only by intelligent and expert manipulation of natural and universal principles that any spiritual or material results can be achieved. Such knowledge can only be attained under the wise guidance of masterly men who know the laws underlying such principles. Such teachers are found mostly in the great mystic and occult schools or orders, of which there are still a few in the present world. But let all beware of the little cliques, circles, and furtive meetings of self-proclaimed masters who have neither authority, training, or knowledge, except the cunning to fleece the aspirant who is misled by their bombastic claims. The occult orders of which Dr. Michaud speaks in the first paragraph are not generally known to the public, but are the secret orders which exist today, as they always existed in the past. These orders are as well hidden as the first matter of the alchemists. The profane and vulgar come into contact with their members regularly, but because the sight of the masses has been sealed, they do not recognize them and pass by blindly. For God has blinded their minds and made gross their senses, and left them to carry on their experiments with all manner of false substances. Nor do they seem able to perceive their error, or to be roused from their idle imaginations by persistent failure. Fulcanelli said that, no one may aspire to possess the great secret if he does not direct his life in accordance with the researches he has undertaken. It is not enough to be studious, active, and persevering if one has no firm principles, no solid basis, if a moderate enthusiasm blinds one to reason, if pride overrules judgment, if greed expands before the prospect of a golden future. Further on, in his concluding remarks of his book Le Mystère de Cathedrals, he says, the mysterious science requires great precision, accuracy, and perspicacity in observing the facts, a healthy, logical, and reflective mind, a lively but not overexcitable imagination, a warm and pure heart. It also demands the greatest simplicity and complete indifference with regard to theories, systems, and hypotheses, which are generally accepted without question on the testimony of books or the reputation of their authors. It requires its candidates to learn to think more with their own brains and less with those of others. Finally, it insists that they should check the truth of its principles, the knowledge of its doctrine, and the practice of its operations from nature, the mother of us all. I am aware that Fulcanelli was referring to alchemy in this instance, but the same philosophy holds good for all areas of study. It says in the Divine Pomander of Hermes Trismegistus that there can be no religion more true and just than to know the things that truly are. This should be the aim of the disciple on the path, for that way lies power, freedom, and peace. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow, as night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. Shakespeare. This does not mean, as some may think, the same as the 20th century occultist Aleister Crowley's famous injunction, do what thou wilt, which implies free license without regard of principles and the rights of other people. There is a very great difference between doing what we want and doing what we ought. The former kind of behavior belongs to the egoist, ruled by the lower mind, who feels no duty to his fellow man nor his own higher mind. These are the strong and evil, who, because of their strength, often rule and tyrannize their victims, the masses who obey them out of spinelessness and fear. The main bulk of humanity are made out of cowardly clay, and the tyrant finds little resistance when he wants to leave his heel print, for most people will let him in order to save their own skins. Hitler made the comment that, how fortunate for leaders that men do not think, and the majority of rulers do what they will because the ignorant dolts that go to make up the masses support and assist them. We have all seen humanity, with their arms in the air, cheering and approving of tyrants and debauched elected leaders. These images should drive home to us the profound stupidity of the average man, but they do not, for the masses of the world have learnt nothing and are still just as easily swayed by these reprobates. After their heroes fall, they make dog-eared excuses and slink away to glorify some other malefactor. And eventually some mealy-mouthed spinner of yarns, also known as an historian, will turn the hate-filled little tyrants into heroes, and with the same stroke of the pen with which they elevated the mass murderer Alexander into the great, they will no doubt promote our depraved modern leaders into a variety of mighty and omnipotent heroes. The wise man, filled with a high sense of duty and justice, may do anything he wants to do. He is free to be true to himself and need not be controlled by earthly law, for he behaves with common sense, which is not as common as one may think, and is a man of principle and honor. This rare person, in his wisdom, is not influenced by the customs, opinions, and dogmas of an area or era, for he knows that these things vary from country to country, religion to religion, person to person, time to time, and therefore cannot be true. A wise man acts on, and honors, only the truth from his own soul, which he receives via his own awakened higher mind. Being true to oneself is only possible for a person who is filled with true morals, as opposed to the morals of churchianity. Guilt, repentance, and gnashing of teeth, as a result of our actions, will be a thing of the past, for actions will be based on wisdom and words will be words of truth, duties will be performed willingly and cheerfully, in the knowledge that we are in the service of the masters. Truth will shine in the disciple's heart like a brilliant beacon, and it will guide and comfort him and benefit all those who come into contact with him, whether they know it or not. This is the only way to the masters. The way of service. Remember, I said service, not lip service or self-service. If this is not mysterious or glamorous enough for you, then go and chant some Tibetan mantras or channel some Red Indian spirit guide until the dreaded karma slaps you round the ears. Good karma, bad karma, we have all heard of it unfortunately, but what is it? You will find the origins of it in an old Hindu manuscript called The Laws of Manu, Chapter 12, entitled Transmigration. It teaches that he who steals shall pass 1,000 times through the bodies of spiders, snakes, and lizards. A drunkard shall be reborn as a small or a large insect. A man who steals grain shall spend his next life on earth as a rat, one who steals honey incarnates as a stinging insect, one who steals meat, a vulture, one who steals gems will come back as a goldsmith, and so on and so forth. It would be interesting to see what would be the fate of one who steals grain, meat, and gems, and who also had the misfortune of being a drunkard. Would he come back as a bit of this and a bit of that? Similar to a patchwork quilt? Who knows the mysterious laws of karma? I hesitate to think what would happen to me if I killed a spider inhabited by a wretched thief. Would I reincarnate as a thief, perhaps? Then, because I was a thief, would I have to be reborn as a spider? The plot thickens, and so does my confusion. Forgive me, all you karmic emanations who actually live by this. I jest, but not too irreverently. Catholics have lived under the same yoke also, although they call it by a different name, a more familiar name, perhaps? And that name is guilt. Guilt leads to fear, fear leads to cruelty, cruelty leads to cowardice, and cowardice leads to inaction, which is the enemy of spiritual growth. Karma is also reminiscent of revenge, and you would be excused for thinking that the revengeful God of Moses had a hand in the creation of karmic laws. To persons armed with precious common sense, it would be unthinkable that an all-wise, all-powerful, and loving God would resort to a noxious and hard-hearted failing like revenge. To even think it is blasphemy. Karma is the vicious circle of an eye for an eye, and was no doubt thought up by some paltry Hindu ascetic who wanted everybody to be as miserable as he was himself. Blavatsky says, talking about the great antiquity of the laws of Manu, the laws of Manu is the abridgment of the laws, compiled and arranged by later Brahmins to serve as an authority for their ambitious projects, and with the idea of creating for themselves a rule of domination. She goes on, the Brahmins have undeniably remodeled these traditions at some distant period, and made many of the actual laws, as they now stand in the Code of Manu, to answer their ambitious views. And what better way to enslave people than through guilt and fear? In this way are the holy teachings manipulated, then as now, and there are few, if any, that have not been tampered with in some way. Crafty and power-hungry priests have always seen fit to interject fire and brimstone into the original teachings of the great messengers in order to keep the flock in line. Just because a document or a teaching is ancient does not mean that it is necessarily sacred. There were just as many scoundrels back in the days of yore, for it is true that human nature does not change much. Let us therefore always use common sense when we examine any works, ancient or modern. In Occult Enigmas, Dr. Michaud says, karma, like everything else, is the realization of a state of consciousness which has no connection whatever with actuality. I hope I shall not shock you all thoroughly when I say that there is no such thing as karma. I do not believe in it any more than I believe in the bogey of sin as such. A life spent in the getting of knowledge will eventually and hopefully lead to an increase in wisdom. Good intentions followed by action will not be annulled, karmic style, just because we happen to make a mistake. It is from those very mistakes that we should learn to do better next time. The Lords of Life have infinite patience with erring humanity. They know that the school of life is hard, but they also know that a person is given infinity in which to perfect themselves. To think the Lords of Life will take revenge if you put a foot wrong is a hellish idea, and one you would be wise to throw out along with all the other rubbish some people would have you believe. Most of it is created by the authors of such drivel out of their need to gain power over people, or just simply to earn a fast buck. Protect yourself from these irritating spiritual pygmies by developing a healthy dose of skepticism. Those who think that skepticism goes hand in hand with doubt would be wrong, for, as St. Beuve said, a skeptic is not one who doubts, but one who examines. I urge all honest seekers to examine carefully all spiritual meals put in front of them. Only when you are convinced that the food is not spoiled or poisoned should you eat and digest it. Take the advice of St. Paul, who told us to prove all things, and only hold fast to that which is good. How will we know what is good? For a start, we should learn to tell the difference between erroneous teachings designed to rob us of our freedom, such as karma, and the good philosophy that will free us from the bonds of slavery. Secondly, we should look for simplicity. There are some students of the mysteries who seem to imagine that the more obscure the phraseology, the wiser the writer or philosopher. And, as the adept who wrote The New Chemical Light says, their interpreters and commentators are more hopelessly unintelligible even than their writers whom they take it upon themselves to explain. Their exposition is more difficult than the text. After we have waded through hundreds, or perhaps thousands, of these volumes, we will have given our intellect some added muscle, but intellect alone will not lead us to the hidden treasure. But let not the diligent and God-fearing inquirer despair. If ye seek the inspiration of God, ye will most surely find it. This knowledge is more easily obtained of God than of men. Rest assured then, gentle reader, that he will grant this boon to you, if you wait upon him day by day with earnest prayer and in the power of a holy and loving life. He will throw open to you the portals of nature, and you will be amazed at the simplicity of her operations. Know for certain that nature is wonderfully simple, and that the characteristic mark of a childlike simplicity is stamped upon all that is true and noble in nature. If you would imitate nature, you should take her simplicity for your model. Once we have learned to attune with all that is good and true, we will draw the real teachers and masters to us, and according to Helvetius in the Golden Calf, blessed is he to whom some adept graciously flings wide the gates of knowledge, and to whom the golden road of the king is thus manifested. We will possess true wisdom when we learn to esteem things according to their value, and not according to the esteem of men. This is not easy to do for a beginner whose path is beset with difficulties and pestilent delusions, fed to them by charlatans who put on airs of profundity and learning, putting the occult teachings into utter disrepute with their quackery. The next time you listen to some self-proclaimed teacher of the mystical arts, and I don't care if this person is famous, infamous, or just a local luminary with a messiah complex, listen carefully to what is being said, and then test it just as carefully. Train yourself to guard against catching every diseased opinion of every current epidemic brought into our midst by the latest New Age comet. Ask awkward questions if you must, ask on whose authority he or she is speaking, and then measure the answer against common sense. Do not be awestruck or intimidated by high-flown speech, exotic-sounding phrases, or a lot of gibberish about unknown qualities, for many there are who will pepper their speech in order to impress you with their knowledge. Similar tactics are often put into practice by the used car salesman when he wants to sell you a worthless rust heap covered in a new and shiny coat of paint. However, these occult miscreants and their mongrel teachings exist for the simple reason that there is a demand for them. These morons make their living out of idiots, and in a way, they deserve each other. In my time, and in different countries, I have sat in on many talks, and I have met many initiates, of their own imaginations mostly, through the years, but I must admit I have been left totally disillusioned by the majority. Some were unblushing and unrepentant liars, some wise in their own conceit, and others were rabid as a result of having been bitten by hallucination. I have met reincarnations of Rameses, Merlin, Pythagoras, and Plato, all stripped of their former grandeur, and sadly devolved both intellectually and spiritually into something reminiscent of what the dog dragged in. I have also met a peculiar person who claimed he channeled Horus. Strange, because even though he had such a wise and holy being on the other end of the line, he failed to ask him wise questions, and I might add, the answers were as dim as the medium, causing me to suspect that the poor man mistook his own shadow for Horus. This was probably just as well, since the light of Horus would certainly have overpowered and blinded the poor wretch in his present state. And, of course, since nobody wants to be outdone by all this psychic power, or to be thought of as unblessed or unchosen, we witness women of a certain age tell stories of masters materializing at night in the ladies' bedrooms. Ya Allah! Let us all hope, for the master's sakes, that these women were decently attired in long flannelette nightgowns for the duration of the visits. These impostors are unaware of the fact that there are, at times, true initiates in their midst, capable of seeing right through their dark deceptions and into their very souls. As Levi says, how pitiable are men in their ignorance, but how they would despise themselves if they only came to know. There really is no substitute for the true master. He will not try to impress you with the rather childish and crass fishtails of the pretenders. He does not need to, for the true universal laws in his possession far excel the fantasies of the windbags in both wonder and beauty. If we want fairy tales, I suggest we turn to Grimm or H.C. Andersen, for they were at least honest and never claimed that their stories were anything but fiction. Which will you choose? The master or the charlatan? Let us listen to the advice of Dr. Michaud. Man is free to choose both good and evil, and is rewarded according to his choice. He is himself to blame for all the grief and sorrow which is his self-engendered lot, for he has, perhaps, in wilful ignorance and faulty trust, cohered with evil men, being fascinated by their glamour, his lower self in full attunement with their sin, thinking it good in his blindness and lack of true perception. Or, being wholly good himself, he may in his innocence have credited the evil man with good intentions, whilst the opposite was true. A large number of students of the mysteries abandon the divine principles for the accomplishment of private ends. Very often their aim is to be admired or liked by the crowd, preferring to please them rather than the higher powers. These are the good sports whose ambition, it seems, is to be sickeningly agreeable to one and all, and they are too busy bagging approving slaps on the back to really care what is being handed out as a teaching within their circle. These are the leeches, uninterested in and incapable of independent thought, and who look to any self-proclaimed prophet, sect, or religion for teachings they can repeat parrot fashion. These good folks can be led by the nose by any beguiler with enough cunning to take charge. Serpents of wisdom. Part 4. How different all this is from the ways of the masters, the initiates, and their disciples. Fulcanelli explains, they are pledged to no oath and bound together by no statute. Their free will is subject to only one rule voluntarily accepted and obeyed, the discipline of the Hermetic philosophy. They do not know one another, they have no meeting place, no headquarters, no temple, no ritual, no exterior mark by which they can be recognized. They were, and still are, lonely workers scattered about the world, cosmopolitan researchers in the narrowest sense of the word. Since the adepts were conscious of no hierarchy, the brotherhood was not looked upon as rank. To it they dedicated their secret work, their experience, the positive light that had been revealed to them by a living faith. It takes the kind of courage which can only come from true faith to stand alone, apart from the crowd, that some mistakenly see as a support group, to depart from all ceremonies, rituals, and public acts of devotion. Most humans have an irresistible need to show off to others their accomplishments, and when they have no accomplishments to justly announce, they tend to gravitate into the spiritual zone where it is possible to claim unverifiable, nebulous accomplishments. In their eagerness to be thought somebody, they often associate with evil men who take advantage of their defect, and who use them as instruments to spread their own rotten teachings. You may reason that these cranks, holding their furtive, little meetings, and giving their inane and boring talks, and writing their sensational and superficial books, are not exactly evildoers. You may, perhaps, find them harmless and well-intentioned, imagining them to really be trying to bring enlightenment to us all. I shall give you the answer of the holy Hindu savior and messenger, Krishna, to such excuses, which you can read in the Book of Saheti by J. Michaud, Ph.D. It is the greatest sin to alter by one iota my holy words revealed to man in general. And this is truly said, for upon him who dares this risk will fall awesome punishments, unless himself he be a master, who knows the laws of the within. Then, should he deem it necessary, he may explain the secret truths unto the few, and for their understanding only. The rest must wait until they are ready to be initiated with the light. The American TV evangelists are the best examples of how dangerous is the practice of changing the Holy Scriptures to suit the needs of the reprobate businessmen who run the shows. They have taken the words of their master and turned it into a money-making machine. Nothing is sacred to these putrid abominations, and their credulous followers get exactly what they deserve. Who can cry for people who refuse to see that which is quite plain to others? This kind of extortion is painfully self-evident among the TV preachers, but not altogether peculiar to them. The so-called New Age and the majority of the occult orders are also infested with the same vermin, but maybe here it is hidden under a greater subtlety. To be able to detect the large part of the deception, you have to be trained by the masters in the real occult sciences, but unfortunately, few have been so blessed. One of the most obvious reasons for this is that the majority appear to be satisfied with imitations. As Aesop says in his fables, men often applaud an imitation and hiss the real thing. That this is true can be clearly seen when we discover the thousands of books written claiming to have rediscovered, a strange term to use for something that was never lost but has always been in the keeping of the great masters, the beliefs and practices of the ancient Druids. The public's ferocious appetite for what is given out as lost rites and magical practices of the Druids is astonishingly great, and considering the fact that a student at their mystery schools had to spend more than 20 years committing their sacred teachings to memory, it is also astonishingly naive to imagine that we can learn anything real from these cheap books. And since the Druids never put their beliefs down in writing, we wonder from which stagnant pool the authors of such books fished their inspiration. Even Stonehenge, standing there for all to see, remains a mystery to this day. This monument can be seen, touched, measured, and read by all and sundry, and it can be read and studied by experts, sensitives, and unsensitives alike, but all to no avail. Stonehenge, like the Sphinx, keeps its secrets. And who shall, these days, explain to us the rich symbology of the cauldron of Ceridwen, of Gwayenbach, who swallowed 3 drops of the content of the cauldron, of Morda the blind man, of the horses of Gwydno, of Elphin, and of the hare, the greyhound, the fish, the hawk, the grain of wheat, and the black hen, all found in the story of Taliesin in the Mabinogion? And who shall unravel the poems of the chief bard Taliesin? Minstrels preserve in their false custom, immortal ditties are their delight, vain and tasteless praise they recite, falsehood at all times do they utter. Taliesin, the spite of the bards. All that is written about the mystery teachings of the Druids, the wise oak men of old, is nothing but speculation and theory, and sometimes not even theory but only crude invention. If you are interested in reading about the history of the Celts, and about the wisdom of their leaders, then read Pliny, who has much to say about them, and who, after all, observed them at close range unlike the modern-day hallucinator. The Druids are not the only ones being used as an instrument to line the pockets of cunning malefactors. The ancient Egyptians, Scandinavians, Gnostics, the Popol Vuh of the Quiche Mayans, along with the Hermetic teachings, have also been put to the same misuse. Hermes Trismegistus, the scribe of the gods, whose secrets, according to Zosimus of Panopolis, was regarded as an esoteric art and was revealed exclusively to the Egyptian hierophants and their initiates in the mystery schools. Nothing has changed since then, for the secrets are still only known to the adepts, in spite of what the rabble claim. In the preface to the anonymous alchemical text, The Glory of the World, it is written, the books of the alchemists seem to have had a dual purpose. Firstly, one of intercommunication between masters of the art, many of whom remained anonymous or used pseudonyms. Secondly, as an advertisement to possible seekers that there was a mystery to be sought. The works themselves make it clear that one cannot follow the art from books alone, and that the would-be adept must seek a master in order to learn the secrets of the art. Again, we discover that the only way a student of the mysteries can find his way through the maze is with the aid of a kindly master. All else is worthless opinion, vain assumptions, and empty conceit, being based on error and ignorance. The Kybalion says that the half-wise, recognizing the comparative unreality of the universe, imagine that they may defy its laws. Such are vain fools, and they are broken against the rocks and torn asunder by the elements by reason of their folly. The truly wise, knowing the nature of the universe, use law against laws, the higher against the lower, and by the art of alchemy transmute that which is worthy, and thus triumph. Mastery consists not in abnormal dreams, visions, and fantastic imaginings or living, but in using the higher forces against the lower, escaping the pains of the lower planes by vibrating on the higher. Transmutation, not presumptuous denial, is the weapon of the master. Let the student's aim constantly be to deserve the attention of the masters through sane thinking, through love and service to our fellow man, and through faith, and lo, the master will appear. But who is this master? Asks Isha Schwaller de Lubex in her book Her Bach. Have patience. You want to know too soon. He who would win perfect knowledge must begin by recognizing his perfect ignorance. If you were not deceived by words, you would not have failed to recognize the master already. I have heard it said that the peoples of this world are becoming more aware and spiritual, that after the turn of the century, this was written in 1994, ed., we will yet again celebrate the arrival of the new golden age. Between then and now, a variety of disasters such as earthquakes, volcanic outbreaks, wars, etc., all culminating in the shifting of the poles, have been predicted to take place. I cannot speak for the disasters, but will leave such things to the great powers whose work it is to visit on us such events as will benefit our growth, although I do have doubts as to the early arrival of the Golden Age. H. P. Blavatsky says in her Secret Doctrine that the cycle is moving down and, as it descends, the physical and bestial nature of man develops more and more at the expense of the spiritual self. We are at the moment about 5,000 years into the Kali Yuga age. It is the fourth and last age, and according to the Vishnu Purana, it is an age of misery, misfortune, and decrepitude. The ancient Hindu cycle states that the Kali Yuga will take 432,000 years to work itself out. This means that we still have 427,000 years remaining of this dark age, and, of course, just as many years before the arrival of the next golden age. In the book of Saheti mentioned earlier, there is a prophecy concerning the Kali Yuga which runs as follows: the whole world will be in turmoil. There will be rulers upon the earth of churlish spirit, violent temper, and ever addicted to falsehood and wickedness. They will inflict death upon women and children, seize the property of their subjects. They will be of limited power, their lives will be short, and their desires insatiable. People of various countries will mingle with them and follow their example. The people will perish, wealth and piety will decrease until the world will be wholly depraved. Property alone will confer rank, wealth will be the only source of devotion, passion will be the sole bond of union between the sexes, falsehood will be the only means of success in litigation, and women will be objects merely of sensual gratification, and external types will be the only distinction of the several orders of life. A rich man will be considered pure, dishonesty will be the universal means of subsistence, weakness the cause of dependence, menace and presumption will be substituted for learning, liberality will be devotion, mutual assent, marriage, fine clothes, dignity. He who is the strongest will reign, the people, unable to bear the heavy burdens, will flee, thus decay will constantly proceed until the human race approaches annihilation. This prophecy, written thousands of years ago, no longer sounds like a prophecy, but more like fact. This is life, perfectly described, at the end of the 20th century, and it makes one shudder to see how easily humanity has taken to this lifestyle. Like a duck takes to water. These are the reasons why the disciple on the path to the light has a duty to keep the flame alive for their brethren, for the few who are getting weary and who are earnestly searching for a better way. The merely curious will fall away of their own accord, returning to the manifold deceptions of the new age, with its various cults, sects, and personalities. This is an age when we make horrible wars on one another, not to establish justice on earth, but out of greed for wealth and lust for power. We imagine we are no longer savage, that we are sophisticated and progressive, educated and civilized. We smile condescendingly at our forefathers with their pyramids, hieroglyphs, works of art, manifold gods, sacred writings, and heathen beliefs, replace it all with skyscrapers, modern art, psychiatry, television, cars, and atom bombs, and curiously call it progress. We stress the importance of education for all, and we seem to have, in the words of Mackin, the crazy notion that a man who can read a book is educated, while a man who cannot read is uneducated. He goes on to say, it would be, perhaps, too much to say that education in any real sense is utterly impossible at the present day. It must be a work of enormous difficulty, for true teaching that can be given from books or from word of mouth is straightway contradicted and annulled by the whole atmosphere and circumstance of modern life. How can we truly learn beauty if our days are passed, for the most part, in a horrible orgy of hideousness and corruption? How can we expect a factory hand to realize the beauty, the wonder, the mystery of anything whatever when his whole life is passed in some soul and mind and body destroying occupation, when his daily work is hardly more intelligent than that of the cogs and endless bands and poison vats which he has to supervise, and his only holiday is made up of a nightmare, washed down with much adulterated beer? A man who lives such a life can see nothing and understand nothing. He has, not by his own fault, but by the fault of his master and spiritual teachers, fallen again from paradise. And, so far as one can see, his one idea of happiness is to turn out his master and become a master himself, which is about as foolish and futile as if one proposed to regenerate America by seeing that every adult citizen became a millionaire. One discovers but little hope for such men as these, and the so-called education that is given them is probably but the adding of fuel to the flames of their burning. It is a giving of a picture gallery to a blind man. It has been shown again and again that the result of more than 50, at the time Mackin was writing, years compulsory education has been the creation of a race of ferocious and degraded hooligans. Instead of evolving, humanity seems to be degenerating. The trend does not appear to be towards a better and brighter future, but towards a living hell. What will be the outcome? Those who are already awake will know. Those who are asleep do not care. 100 ages we had kept cradled in visions of hate and care, and each one who waked as his brother slept found the truth. Shelley, Prometheus Unbound. There are many who long for beauty and justice, but feel overwhelmed by the corruption and the evil in the world, and are at a loss as to how to even begin to make a difference. They feel powerless against the self-serving system, and after a few futile attempts at being heard, they give up, forgetting that without the help of the higher powers, little, if anything, can be achieved. Whereas, if a person approaches the holy beings with petitions for help or guidance with a sincere and trusting heart, their prayers will be answered. There are specific ways of doing this, and I will give you one of the ways of the masters of wisdom. To address the higher beings you must never kneel down, for the act of kneeling down lowers the whole attitude of the petitioner and brings him in attunement with the lower worlds of beings, with the material, or even lower. Therefore, the supplicant should stand upright, with arms crossed over the breast and one hand resting lightly on each shoulder. He should look up. Furthermore, he should address his petition silently and mentally, for the spoken word issues from within outwards, and as soon as it is uttered, it flows into the material realms of illusion and is lost there. It can then have material results only, and, at the worst, they may be dire in the extreme, or being answered with satanic laughter by the lower elementals if the prayer should be in connection with spiritual conditions. The only powers that can be addressed with the spoken word are the dark beings, or the material. In order to petition the divine denizens of the spiritual realms, the prayer should be from without inwards, from the material to the spiritual. That is the only way in which such prayers will reach the goal for which they are intended. At the same time, the supplicant should raise up his thoughts. They should go inwards and upwards, and always silently. Here is a prayer which is absolutely spiritual, and yet can have marvelous results for the good of all mankind if sincerely projected in the manner I have just described: life, light, and love, may the spirit of goodness reach out into all space. May the positive powers of these principles overcome all negative conditions. And may peace profound reign everywhere. So mote be it. Amen. 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 Face the east when doing this, and do it as many times each day and night as you wish. This will help the world in general, for you will attune with the great white brotherhood of all the divine and spiritual entities, and they will hear you and act. These are the teachings of a truly great master on how to send forth the light to combat the evil in this world. We are never alone, for there are always divine beings nearby waiting to help us, but we have to approach them of our own free will before they can come to our assistance. For as long as we imagine we can do it unaided, our conceit will bar all communications with the spiritual realms, and the only inspiration we receive will be from the lower beings who take delight in misleading and destroying all that is good and true. Bernard Shaw correctly observed, "Common people do not pray. They only beg." Instead of groveling on our knees, asking God for whatever little thing our hearts desire, our prayers should be more like Blavatsky's will prayer, an internal command. The will is the first of all powers. Through the human will the passions are made to correct themselves, but will or intent of purpose must be followed by action. To merely talk and have good intentions will lead us nowhere. The idle who doze and loaf and languish in spiritual sloth die before they wake up, like bad seeds that never come to fruition. These are the cowardly gray masses who swarm the earth like clouds of locusts. They are filled with fear and irresolution and labor under the mistaken belief that they are virtuous in their apathy. But virtue cannot rise out of inertia, and a dull person can never become a magician. We have to meet life head-on, conquer life's obstacles through willpower, and act as one who desires goodness. The human will grows through usage and adversity, for adversity is the creator of the will, in the same way as shadow or darkness is the creator of the light. Therefore, adversity and darkness are not evils visited upon us in order to confound us, but are instead tools to be used to enable us to grow towards the goodness of the light. All genuine mystics love action, for they, above all other people, realize that what they see they can never obtain unless they do what they can to raise themselves, step by step, to become nobler. Learn to enjoy a challenge, for without this drive you will complacently chew the cud with the rest of the herd. This is one of the reasons why karma should be abolished, for it leads to dread of action, making a person hesitant to move for fear of doing something wrong. Thus, karma becomes the avoidance of adversity, the very adversity needed for the removal of ignorance and the growth of the all-important will. Levi states that every man is either good or bad. No middle course is possible. The indifferent, the lukewarm are not good, they are consequently bad, and the worst of all bad, for they are imbecile and cowardly. The battle of life is like a civil war. Those who remain neutral betray both parties alike and renounce the right to be numbered among the children of the fatherland. Only a person who is bold and fearless in the face of adversity will be counted among the faithful. Such a one will know that the Lords of life and light assists and protects the warrior who fights with the sword of righteousness and who never allows the worm of doubt to live or for sleep to overtake his wakefulness. This is the child of light who rises from the ashes of ignorance, like the phoenix, and flies off on wings of truth towards the light. I am the lion god coming forth with extended strides. I have shot arrows and wounded the prey. I am the eye of Horus. I have conquered. Let the Osiris Ani advance in peace. Egyptian ritual. When the masters say action, they do not mean that you should toil and sweat until you drop. To labor like a cart horse in order to keep a business going or to make a fortune is wrong, for what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? We have all come across the pitiful slaves who work all day and often far into the night, 7 days a week, in order to hang on to their position in life, climbing executive ladders, driving bargains, peddling, soliciting, hawking, canvassing, bidding, and thieving, simply to get rich. To watch these mortals, whipped by greed and ambition, half dead from their feverish efforts, is a deplorable sight. They toil and grind, drudge and slave, as if driven by the demon himself, like berserkers with work assignments from Nibelheim. And for what? Some miserable earthly kingdom they never even have the time to enjoy. If we put all our time and effort into building a material empire, and then, as life goes, we happen to lose it all, what will we have left? As Al-Ghazali states, you possess only whatever will not be lost in a shipwreck. Should Providence want you to succeed in a venture, you will achieve success with a healthy amount of honest effort, but if you go against the grain, you may have to continually breathe life into a thing that was not meant to exist. It is, in fact, ignorance, or a kind of madness, to strive too much to gain the things which are beyond our reach, and if we strive too much to gain the things which are not for us, we may lose the things that were intended for us. If you lose all your worldly goods, and only have 2 loaves of bread, sell one of them, take what you get, and buy some flowers for your soul instead. Saadi. A student of the mysteries should carefully guard against too much seriousness and austerity. The path is strewn with haunted shadows, dressed like morticians and with complexions the color of ectoplasm, who avoid all merriment and act like waiters at a 4-star restaurant. Wherever they walk, they puff up arid dust clouds of their own grave self-importance and are about as jolly and optimistic as a sacrificial victim at a satanic mass. These dull mortals want to give the impression that they are carrying the wisdom of the world on their slouched shoulders, but one look behind their screen of pretended piousness should uncover a nest of vanities with hungry, open mouths, waiting for their daily feed of puffed-up worms. Somehow, who knows how, their ventilated brains got hold of the wrong end of the divining rod, and they mistook solemnity for wisdom, as Americans will often mistake the Grand Ole Opry for culture. Over-seriousness is an affectation and a sign by which we may recognize the person who pretends to be holy and wise, making up for the lack of inner spirituality by attempting to appear as if they are grappling with the deep mysteries of the universe. Michel de Montaigne asks, is there anything so assured, resolved, disdainful, contemplative, solemn, and serious as an ass? He also says, no one is exempt from talking nonsense. The mistake is to do it solemnly. And we all talk nonsense most of the time, and if we are without vanity, we will admit to it and laugh about it. But if we are wrapped up in self-love and pride, we will take offense at others lightly brushing aside our deep and profound statements. Our feelings will be hurt, and we sulk like spoiled children who, momentarily, are not getting the attention we feel is rightfully ours. Whereas, wisdom brings joy, and when you are filled with joy, you can afford to bring humor and laughter into your life. A sense of humor is the mark of the sage, but solemnity is the mark of a fool. Be free and live. Forget all about the bigots who damns you to hell for not believing as they do. Their opinions are mean-spirited and irrelevant, and their eagerness to condemn you for behaving badly is great. They will make you a sinner for a word, and their boasts about morals, doctrines, and diets should be esteemed no higher than you would a braying ass. What they say, let them say. Epictetus told us that if a man is unhappy, it is his own fault, for God made all men to be happy. And J. Michaud adds to this, there is no absurdity which has not its defender. If the absurdity be too stupid, it will destroy itself in the end, and there is no need to worry about it. But good fun, which keeps you in the heart and mind, is like true virtue. We cannot do without it, and it will keep people away from vice. The same writer, in the teachings of Li Wenhao, says, happiness is an illusion. Sorrow is an illusion. Better be deluded by happiness. A person who is always depressed, serious, or angry is unbalanced and lacks faith in the protection that comes from the higher powers to one who puts his trust in God. Dr. Michaud also asks, have you come to the blessed realization that nothing can hurt you if you have faith in God's love? Have you not come through countless incarnations, and is it not true that nothing can destroy the eternal you that is part of God the Father? Then why be anxious or have fear? These questions are particularly apt in an age where we put so much trust in psychology and run to see a psychoanalyst, therapist, counselor, or whatever else one should wish to call these busybodies, with all our real and imagined problems. From them, we learn to shift the blame for our own weaknesses over to such absurdities as codependencies, whatever that is. We learn to call ourselves dysfunctional when we indulge in bad, criminal, or just plain stupid behavior. These doctors of the mind flourish in spite of the fact that they understand nothing of the human mind, treating the effects they see with theories that have sprung out of guesswork, and not even good guesswork on the whole. They do not understand that a person has a higher and a lower mind, nor do they understand the battles fought between these two opponents. That the eyes of these self-opinionated doctors were opened would be too much to hope for. Their vision is obscured by their own conceit, and what they desire is not the truth, but proof of their own opinions and foregone conclusions. That is not all. They charge a fee for their ignorance. I think we can safely sweep aside these shrinks along with the other quacks of the new age, for they belong in the same garbage can, and settle for the fact that, in the words of P. B. Medawer, psychoanalytic theory is the most stupendous intellectual confidence trick of the 20th century. In the teachings of Li Wenho, the eponymous Chinese sage says, there are as many ways to heaven as there have been, are, and will be human beings, provided they sincerely wish for this divine felicity. The best a man can do is to thank the celestial spirits for all good things when they come, to be patient in all adversity, to ask forgiveness when he has erred and offended against the laws, which are engraved on each man's heart, if he will but heed and read them. Thus, when he has gone astray somehow, help will always be sent to lift him up again, for the gods are terribly patient. By avoiding evil to the best of his ability, he will keep the mirror of his heart clean, and the ever-loving sons of light will do the rest, for they understand, having once been frail men themselves. If mankind would only realize this truth, they would strive with all their might to rise to all that is good, loving, and merciful. Then the world would at once become an earthly paradise, and the human wolves, jackals, and tigers, which now abound, would lay themselves down by the side of the meek and lowly, and turn their ferocious will to the purpose of helping their brethren instead of destroying them. Let us ask the masterly Wenho if this will ever come to pass. The great message has rung forth many times, and those who have listened have been saved. It is the newcomers, who have but lately evolved from the shadows, who must ever be taught anew. The true teachings should never cease, nor would they if all men were always ready to receive them, but all have to learn their lessons in the hard school of the material before they can ascend to the spiritual. After each period of darkness appears a torchbearer who is willing to sacrifice himself in order to bring to men the holy illumination of truth, and those who are sufficiently evolved will hear and follow. Idries Shah, in his book Learning How to Learn, says, "You ask how studies deteriorate. One of the causes is the sheer weight of numbers of deluded or superficial people who demand deep or spiritual knowledge. They create a supply and demand situation which can cause so much imitation of teaching and learning that the study's imitation is taken for the real. Although the esoteric teachings of the masters never deteriorate, metaphysics or the occult, in an exoteric sense, has turned into a sideshow of freaks, and it is to be hoped that one of their hideous little aliens will arrive in a gigantic spaceship and whisk these mystery mongers away to some remote planet, renamed Abracadabra in their honor. Imitation is always dressed up in confused and fantastic-sounding teachings, which take their students along roads that lead nowhere, and where, eventually, detours will have to be made, and other roads tried. This type of seeker will normally choose the broad highways thronged with other seekers like themselves, and who entice them with loud boasts, loud music, and cheap thrills. Few, if any, notice the narrow, little dirt road, covered in sharp rocks, leading off to the side. Nobody stands at its entrance advertising its glorious destination. It has no arrow pointing to it, and no street sign has been afforded this simple path. Its virtue can only be understood by those whose higher minds have become active. These seekers will gratefully separate from the crowd and start their lonely journey along what at first seems an uninviting and testing path. Only their faith keeps them moving forward until all the tests of the path have been overcome and until the day arrives when they can be initiated with the light. These initiates will then know that only the simple truth can stand unadorned by worldly opinion, human reasoning, and vain intellect, all empty glories which feed off the approval, applause, and flattery of those whom Shakespeare called the plumeless genus of bipeds. The things that are most hidden and unperceived by the majority are often those we see, handle, and experience on a regular basis. As, for example, the apple must have dropped on countless heads before it fell on Newton's. We are told by the alchemists that we come into contact with the mercury of the sages, the prima materia, in our daily lives, and yet its virtue goes undiscovered by scientists, priests, and housewives alike, and is revealed only to the chosen of God. So what is that mysterious something which causes us to be chosen of God? What is it which eventually wakes us up and makes us aware? What rends the veils? What are the veils? We need not go to the mysterious and exotic for our answer, neither do we need to have enough money to travel to faraway Tibet, India, or Egypt. We do not need to be titled or to have a university degree, nor do we need to go to California to attend New Age workshops, or to go to some soul retreat to have our brains pickled by charlatans, for Thoth and the 7 divine masters of wisdom made the secret accessible to all, and the keys to the temple are intricately simple to find. Let us start by examining the last question: what are the veils? The veils are hung up by that master draper, the lower mind, layer upon layer of it. These layers consist of opinion, hatred, cruelty, greed, envy, intolerance, vanity, pride, credulity, jealousy, materialism, lust, self-righteousness, judgment of others. Need I go on? These are the traits of the lower mind, and as long as these are allowed to master us, they will shut out the light from our higher mind. The veils are our lower emotions and passions, and unless we can transmute these into the virtues of the higher mind by means of mental alchemy, we shall continue to exist as blobs of the base and lackluster metals. Our minds will be rusted, stiff and opinionated iron, our hearts will be cold and cruel steel, and we will drag our heavy, leaden feet through our self-created spiritual swampland, trying all the while to keep from sinking into the slime. The transmutation of the lower emotions into the higher is true magic. Nothing else will do. You can waste lifetimes on ritual, ceremonies, conjurations, on running after gurus, on consulting tarot cards and astrologers, on talismans and cheap incense, on incomprehensible tomes or the childish literature of the thrill seekers, but the fact still remains that, until you have become thoroughly disillusioned and disgusted with all the false teachers and teachings in existence, you will not look for the real thing. Until you stop seeking for the answers outside yourself and look to the master within, the higher mind, you will be like the mongrel who barks up the wrong tree. But when the time comes that you are guided by your higher self, answers to seemingly unsolvable questions will come. The lower mind with its incessant chatter and tyrannical self-interest will be stilled, powerless against the patient and loving rule of the higher mind who guides with justice and mercy. At such a time, the Kabbalah will yield its secrets to you, the Druids will invite you to drink from their cauldron. St. John will let you share his revelation, the Sphinx will tell you all that she had witnessed, Osiris will free your limbs from the mummy cloth, and Thoth Hermes will write your name in the scroll of life. Hail soul, thou mighty one of strength! Verily I am here, I have come, I behold thee. I have passed through the Tuat, the underworld. I have seen my divine father Osiris. I have scattered the gloom of night. I am his beloved one. I have stabbed the heart of the darkness of Set, the lower mind. I have performed all the ceremonies for my divine father Osiris. I have opened every way in heaven and on earth. I have made a victorious path for myself. Egyptian ritual. When you have fought the lower emotions and won, you will be the victorious warrior of light who draws forth the sword of righteousness from the stone, the Excalibur of wisdom which, here on earth, should be used to protect the weak, the poor, the sick, and the needy, and also as a pointer to direct other worthy seekers to the path of the masters. Never again will you have to ask, who, where, and what are the masters, for you will know. And your reunion will be celebrated with tears of joy and laughter, and as the great poet Shelley said, it is something sadder, sweeter far than all. It is fitting that I should end with the words of a truly great soul, J. Michaud, Ph.D., whose wise words have been quoted throughout this little patchwork quilt. Brothers and sisters, a great work is waiting for you all. It is the work of the true mystic, it is the work of the great white brotherhood. It is the work of the adepts who by means of consistent self-development have fitted themselves in the ruling of the world. But it is not necessary for us to rule the world from a throne or by means of dictatorship. We must rule the world by love and service. That is our work. The preparation for this need neither be long or arduous. All that you need is goodwill and persistence and love. And the result of this work to you will also be the power to control forces both in the spiritual and physical realm. The masters will impart to you wisdom by communion and inspiration, which is otherwise unobtainable. And their protecting hand will be over you, and they will cover you with their feathery wings and keep you from all harm. As the Master says, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. If you do all these things, there will at times shine from you a light such as you see in the famous picture of the Presence, a light that is not of this earth, but of the celestial realms, where is the house of the Father, the house with many mansions. You yourself will become a presence, and even if your light cannot be seen, it will be felt, for it can never be entirely hidden. May we all receive grace to be found worthy for this great work, and may the blessings of light, life, and love be with you now and forever and bring you peace profound. Amen.